Lots of you have had experience of engaging with the media, and there is so much going on out there. There's print, there are trade publications, there are radio programs, there are online programs, there is YouTube, there is television, there are things like Reuters, where you can put if you want a story there, you can put it there, and that's where journalists go and pick up their stories. So all sorts of different kinds of media that you can engage with. And even within those, for instance, in radio, you could do a live broadcast, or you could do what they call a down-the-line broadcast, where you're in a studio and you just hear the presenter. And sometimes, I don't know if any of you have done these, but you can do something that's set up, usually by an agency, and they'll set up a whole lot of interviews, one after the other. Most of them will be local radio stations, but they're really important. They've got very good, listeners, and they often listen in the day, and they will have one interview after another, and some of them will go out live, and some of them will be recorded. And so you need to be able to adjust that. And the recorded ones will be usually a much longer interview, but they'll cut it. So this is why when we're going through the interview process, try and think in terms of how you can condense and make your key messages very concise. If you go on long and rambling things, they can cut bits out. And I don't know if you ever listen in the news in the morning. Sometimes you hear a politician or somebody being interviewed, and it all sounds perfect, and then in the next bulletin, they've just report on it, and they've cut a little bit out. And when it's taken out of context, it sounds completely different from what they had when you heard the whole thing. And it sounds awful, and you think, but that's not what they said. And of course, if you allow that, so if you keep things short, it's much more difficult for them to take something out of context. So how can your organisation prepare? And I think, we prepared for this. And this is absolutely the key to everything. What background information do you need? You need information about your organisation. Who are you? I think one of the things in the previous workshops that people kept talking about RMDs. As a journalist, I don't know what an RMD is. And I think it's one of the most challenging things that you have to explain. What is an RMD? It's easier in the English language because we call it arthritis. But one of the reasons that people don't like calling it arthritis is because arthritis is associated with old age, wear and tear, and so people prefer rheumatic diseases. But what is a rheumatic disease? Again, it still sounds like old people. Oh, I've got a bit of rheumatism, just thinking of old aches and pains, and my knees are not so good. The things that happen when you age. But how do you explain RMDs? Because nobody outside EULAR has heard of RMDs. It's a great, it's our internal jargon. So that's one of the things that you can prepare. How are you very concisely going to describe what the diseases are? About your organisation, about how many people in your country are affected, about how many people in different areas are affected, how many more people who are undiagnosed might be affected. So all of those basic things. Then you've got your key messages. Now, for every audience that you might approach, you're going to have different key messages. If you're approaching a policymaker, it's going to be a very, very different key message to if you're doing a sort of public awareness campaign, or you're trying to recruit new members, or you're looking for fundraising. So all of those different audiences all want key messages. And a Q&A. A Q&A is an internal document. And I've prepared, as I say, a little manual for you, and it's got a Q&A. Start off with the question that you would least like anybody to ask you. What is the question? I never want to be asked that question. Because if you can think about it now, rather than putting your head behind a blanket and saying, oh no, I don't want to think about that, let's go on to a nice question, a nice easy one. Put those in your Q&A and update it, because things change, the environment changes. And have that Q&A there so you've always prepared. If somebody rings up, you're always prepared. Have media spokespeople and have them prepared. The people who speak to the press or the media in your organisation should know they are the designated people. If you're coming up to a press event, get the media trained. Go through the Q&A with them. Think about the questions that they might be asked by that journalist and prepare. When a politician goes on the news, they have always been media trained for that interview. So preparation is absolutely key. Now what happens in your organisation if a journalist rings up and says, "Oh hi, I'm from the Times and I'd like to talk to somebody. I'm doing this article." What happens? The person answers the phone. What do? So that's what we call a protocol, a media protocol. And a protocol means that everybody in your organisation who might answer the phone and finds out that it's a journalist knows who to put them through to and what to do if that person isn't there. "I'm sorry, the person who's here isn't here to speak to you. Can I take your name? Can I take your details?" And they will call you back. What you don't want is some really enthusiastic volunteer saying, "Oh, I can answer that question for you," because they're not going to be on message. They might go off on their personal agenda. They might say anything. And that's representing your organisation. So for your organisation, it's really good to have a media protocol. So what do journalists want? They're looking for a good story. They're looking for something that's going to attract listeners, attract viewers if it's a television programme. They want something that's going to boost their circulation, that's going to be popular with their readers. So that's what they're looking for. They want something new and exciting, something relevant to their audience and something that meets their deadlines. So they might, if it's a news story, they might say, I need this in 24 hours. So if it's a feature story, there might be a little bit more time. But be aware of their deadlines and always stick to their deadlines. And what they're looking for is the hearts and minds. And I think when we had that presentation on work yesterday, there were lots of good things because you had fantastic statistics that you can work with, but you can also then say, we've got all these statistics, we know this is an economic burden, but if somebody's really diagnosed early, treated well, they can stay and work. I'd like to put you in touch with someone who's, got a fantastic story. There's a really good example of this. And I'm going to use journalistic terms, so if you don't find them offensive, please forgive me, but you're a case study, you're a human interest story. And actually you're a person, we know that, but that's how a journalist will think of you. So, I'm looking for a case study. Great, do you mean you're looking for a person? So don't be offended by it, because that's the way they think. It's their language, not yours. Just understand, great, thank you, I'll be your case study, and it's fine. So be prepared for your interviews. Check out the press. If you have a journalist who calls you and you've never heard of them, they say they're freelance and you're not quite sure, say, thank you so much for calling. I can't actually speak to you at this moment because I'm just about to go into a really important meeting, but I'd like to ring you back, and then just Google them, find out about them. You've got their contact details, you've got their name. Now, there are lots of freelance journalists out there because, people cut down on their staff, so there are lots of freelance journalists. A lot of them write regularly for papers. They're perfectly credible people. What you don't want is someone you've never heard of who you don't know the sort of thing they write. But if you are going to go back to them, then do go back to them when you've said it. Don't just sort of leave it and think, I don't want to. So find out as much as you can in that initial call. Yes, that's very good. Thank you very much. And who are you writing for? What are you writing about? but I'm so sorry, I can't do anything now. I'd like to spend a little time talking to you, but I'll ring you back. And that's your checking out time. Or if you genuinely can't speak to them, or if they want a very medical thing and you need to get hold of your medical director or someone who can answer very specific medical questions with authority, then you say, I'm not the right person to talk to you, we would love to do this interview with you, but I'm going to get in touch with my medical director who's much more qualified to do this call with you. So, your pitch. If you're going to go into them, there are two types of media interview. There's the proactive, where you're going after the journalist, and there's the reactive, where the journalist is coming to you. So know what your key messages are, and know before you start what you want them to do at the end of it. What do you want them to feel differently, think differently, say differently, do differently? What is your call to action? And that's where you want to finish your interview. You want to say, I would like, this is the number to call. This is where to be. This is what we want. So if it's political, be very clear about what you want politicians to do. Because it's all very well known how many people there are out there, and that some people can work and some people can't. But what's the message? If we had funding for this, then da-da-da-da-da. So it's knowing what that call to action is. And again, in your pitch, don't just go, I've got a fun run. What's going to make that fun run different? If there's someone in that fun run who has a good story, is there, somebody who's an athlete who's developed a rheumatic disease? Is there one of your members who's very young and very courageous? Is there somebody there who's got a nice story that you can tell? So you tell their story and say, oh, by the way, and they'll be running here, and we'd really like all your listeners to come along, and if you can't run, come and cheer, and we'll be raising funds, so whatever your message is, but start off with a nice story that's going to catch them. Because if you don't get people really early on in the first 8 seconds, they have got hundreds of emails in their inbox. They've got hundreds of things to do. There's a whole lot of chatter going on. They've got the next story to go on to. So they're going to say, yeah, thank you very much, lots of fun, goodbye. A lot of people said they're really nervous. They get into a complete panic about the media. I talk about stress and distress. I think you need to be up. You need to be alert and aware, and if we didn't have stress in our lives, we'd never get up. We'd just be completely floppy, we'd be so laid back. Oh, workshop, yeah, I might go along, but no, I've got to be at that workshop at this time, so I'm going to that. But that is stress. That's a little bit of adrenaline. I'm going to be there. I'm going to be alert. Hopefully. And, but distress is where you panic. Your breathing's like this, you're sweating, you're absolutely, and that shows. Even if you're on the telephone, it shows. You can hear somebody smiling on the phone, so even if they can't see you, your body language and your demeanour will come across in your voice. So you do need to think about that. And we can do some sort of breathing exercise. You need to see sort of shaking out. But before you do a media interview, just a few deep breaths and then just a little moment to think. That little pause for thought. So you're not going to rush, bang, bang, bang. I've got to say it all very quickly. Just slow down. You can ask questions, as I say. You can ask what the first question is. You can ask them questions before you start the interviews about why they've contacted you, where they're coming from. So lots of things. You can take control of the interview. It doesn't have to just be them driving you. Keep your answers short, we've covered that, and repeat your key messages. 3 times it sometimes takes for that message to get through. So don't be afraid of saying it again and again and again. You might have heard it 100 times because you've practiced it so much, But there, and the people who are listening, it's the first time for them, and they don't know anything about you. Remember that. You know, it's all in there, you know it all, but they don't. So think of it always from someone starting completely from scratch. They don't know anything, and you're explaining it in simple, short, concise, correct answers. Bridging phrases. Well, a bridging phrase is your way of getting out of a question that you don't want to answer, because they're taking you down a route that you don't want to go down. So you can say, and you hear politicians on the radio say it all the time, that's a really interesting question, but I think you're missing the point we really need to get back to, the issue that is most important here. When you're in a media interview, there is an interview technique where people will make you feel very happy and comfortable, and they're your friend. I'm the journalist, I'm your friend, you know, it's really nice. And then they'll ask you some nice easy questions, and then they'll just sneak in a little one underneath, and you'll suddenly find things are going off into a very different direction. I don't think it's going to happen to you very often. If you have issues, if there are issues out there, watch for those and prepare for them. But I think on the main, people are going to be interested in what you have to say. I think your main problem is going to be selling your stories, not dealing with issues. But issues do come up, and you need to be prepared for them. And so don't, when you're having this lovely chat with the journalist, go off your guard. And for as long as you're with that journalist, nothing is off the record. They might ask you, so off the record, what would you really say? What do you feel? You know, outside Arthritis Ireland, what would you actually tell me, Peter? Go on. Give me a little bit of, give me something to work with. You know, I'm looking for a story. I'm looking to help you, Peter. Give me a story.
I know that's exactly what you're looking for, but yeah, not on this occasion. I'm not going to tell you any more than what I'm telling you right now, because there's nothing more to tell.
So yes, so nothing is off the record, and particularly if you're doing a television program and you've got your microphone on, you know, they give you the little clip mic like this, and it's all in there, and then you do the interview, and then suddenly you find that, you know, thank God, that's what I thought they were going to ask me about this. They're listening to you. So the worst one is when someone goes to the loo and they've still got their microphone on. But, so don't forget about the microphones, and never say no comment.
Okay.
So, because there you look guilty. Anybody who says, I'm not going to comment on that, you look guilty. So it's a really interesting question, but it's a question for another day, and it's a question that I'm not going to answer today. But I'd like to talk, so give them something else afterwards. But no comment. Because immediately, what do you think? Someone says no comment. Guilty.